Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Welcome to today's event. We are incredibly excited that you could join us today for a Sidak event. This is Guru in Sikhi, and today we're going to be delving into the role of Guru in a Sikh's life. Before we get started with all of our today's events, we just want to take the opportunity to welcome you and thank you for being a part of our event today. Sidak is something that is so near and dear to a lot of us. And it is, once we've attended Sidak, it becomes this very special part in our lives and a moment in our lives where we were able to delve into ourselves, into our Sikhi, and we made a lot of friends. And you will see throughout today that we have many alumni that are joining us and presenting with us. In fact, there are a number of alumni that have also joined us as participants as well today. So thank you for all of you for joining as well, to share this experience of what we get at Sidak. You will see that it's quite a inspiring place to be. And we're hoping that we can share that spark and that inspiration with all of you today. We have two sessions for you today, Guru in Sikhi and Connecting Through Shabad. And as I mentioned, our facilitators are facilitators at Sidak, so you'll get to meet some of them as well as some of our alumni. A little bit about myself, just so you know who I am. I'll be guiding you in and hosting this event today. My name is Pritpal Singh. I am the lead for Sidak at Sikhi, and I am so incredibly excited to share a little piece of Sidak with you today. Today's event is a little glimpse into what we offer at Sikhi or at Sidak, and we're looking to show you a little bit of what Sidak has to offer. So my journey with Sidak started in 2014. I am from Surrey, British Columbia, and Sidak for the last a few years since 2014 has been in British Columbia in mission. I met some of my best friends at Sidak. I learned how to grow as a leader. Currently I'm a high school vice principal. When I started at Sidak, I was a high school math teacher. And one of the main things that I got out of Sidak for myself was definitely my personal growth, but also how it impacted my students, how being Sikh students and leaders, potential leaders into the future as well. And so Sidak provided me with the tools in order to help guide other leaders as they're growing and learning in the world as well. Sidak had such an impact on me, and I truly found the leadership that I learned at Sidak not only to help me in my career, but also I went back to Sidak multiple times, as you'll see is quite a theme with many of our presenters here today. We tend to find our way back to Sidak. I found my way back as in coordinating roles, in facilitation roles, and now I find myself in the lead role here. We are, as I mentioned, we're very excited to have you all here. But just to get things kicked off and started, I would like to invite Jujhaar Singh, and to be honest, not totally sure what he's going to talk about, but it's going to be more of an opening and a couple of things about Jujhaar. Jujhaar Singh is our executive director at the Sikh Research Institute. He is also one of our facilitators. Jujhaar Singh and I have presented together with our SALT sessions, which are our leadership sessions. He's also helped out in the other tracks in different ways. And so we are excited to have him here today with us. So take it away, Jujhaar Singh.
Wonderful. Can you hear me, Anu?
Yes.
Yes, excellent. Well, Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh to everybody. Anu Kaur is usually not the only one that doesn't know what I'm about to say before I speak, but usually I'm largely on point. So first of all, on behalf of the Sikh Research Institute, our staff, our board, our advisors, our funders, I want to welcome you to this Sidak program. Sikhi's mission is to help everyone help find a connection and inspiration in their Sikhi. And we do this through a whole set of tools and programs and offerings that take people on the journey of awareness to transformation through their connection with the Guru. We are not the ones that inspire. We are not the ones that make the change happen. We are merely a platform, a space, a community, a movement that allows that magic to happen when a Sikh develops their own relationship with the Guru in all its different forms. And nothing better illustrates that mission than our Sidak flagship program. Sidak is not just a camp. We say it's not a camp. It's not just, it has many of the elements that those of us that grew up in Sikh camps have, the fun, the camaraderie, in pre-COVID world when we would get together and have a lot of late night conversations and a lot of outdoor activities and things like that. But with COVID, we've really taken the concept of Sidak and expanded it to be much bigger than a 2-week program. It takes the heart of that and actually tries to recreate that in different spaces. And I can personally speak as someone who actually never, I can confess, I never actually went through the Sidak program, but Sidak has become an absolutely major part of my life, having only missed it a couple of times in the last, I'll say 10 plus years. I brought my family to it. My children have come to it. Sidak is a leadership program, but not in a conventional sense. And in the Sikh world, the way our gurus have defined things, nothing is conventional. We may use the same words, but they mean a totally different thing. So the word leadership has connotations in a Western model, in Eastern models, in a Punjabi or Indian political model. But for us, when we look at this leadership program of Sidak, we unpack it through a totally different paradigm, and that's the Gurmat paradigm that I'm sure we'll get covered many times today, of through a connection with Gurbani, history, lifestyle, Rat, all those different things come together. And Sidak at its best engages our heart, our mind, and our hands. So it helps us fall in love with Sikhi, with the Guru, with Gurbani, with other Sikhs, with our Sangat. It engages the mind and helps us see the world through that lens of how do I look at contemporary issues? How do I look at our own history? How do I look at my career? What I do with my life, my vocation, with a Sikh lens. And then hopefully, most importantly, it allows us to put that into action so that we can bring that Sikh mindset to our family, to our personal relationships, to how we engage with the rest of the world. So Sidak is this opportunity to really give you space to think about how Sikhi can be this foundation to help you transform your inner and outer realities. And it's been like that for me. Like they say, there's no better way to learn than teach. And I'm sure Anus knows that from her career in teaching as well. And having been a part of Sidak as an instructor, leading different programs, sessions, being part of it, it has been one of the largest educational and kind of patriotic experiences in my life, where I've been able to immerse inside the world of Sikhi. And for many of us for whom Sikhi has played a instrumental part of our lives, I can say my Sikhi and Sikhi and Sidak are actually very intertwined. And so those of you who have been to Sidak in person know what I mean about the magic of that place, especially at Khalsa Center in British Columbia. The time I spend there is just surreal. It's otherworldly, and I know that one day soon we'll have a chance to go back there and be in each other's presence. As much as we hate Zoom, I am very thankful for the Zoom online world, because in a virtual Sangat, a virtual community is certainly better than this physical isolation that we would just have if there wasn't this. But boy, I am I'm looking forward to a packed Divan Hall with lots of people all scrunched around me, and being there and being able to be a part of a Ranswai, an Asakivar, a Kirtan, a wonderful Raras, a Vichar. I miss the words of the day on the wall that we do in Divans. I miss the Langar Hall. I miss being late for programs because we're having really amazing conversations after a session. All those things will return in due course. But until then, the team today has put together a magical program that I think is going to really give you an essence of what that is. And it's led by Anukor, who just want to thank for her leadership. Talk about her. Everyone has gone through a journey. And in the time I've known Anu, she's gone from a participant to a teacher and very much a leader of this program for us. And so thank her and the entire team for putting this together. I'm really looking forward to learning. I think the last thing I'll say is the beauty of today is that it's kind of by Sidakers for Sidakers. So we talk often about, who's going to take over succession planning? Where's the next generation coming from? Who is going to take the baton? And today you're going to see we are the ones we've been waiting for. The Sidakers are now actually the ones that are now leading sessions and doing that for some time. And that is intentional. And it gives us great sense of satisfaction and gratitude that we have put something in place that hopefully is now becoming self-perpetuating. So with that, enjoy the day. Hope you take some learnings and reflection from there. And I'll turn it back to Anukor for the rest of the program.
All right. Thank you so much for that, Kulveer Singh. As we talk about all of our experiences today, you'll start to see some themes in this about this idea, this inspiration. This is what we got from it, the leadership, and you'll see that on display today as well. So before we get started, I'm just going to go through a couple of housekeeping things and a few reminders for everyone before we get right into our session. And let me just pop my screen up here. There we go. So today, the shape of today. So we've started off with our opening. We will move into our session 1 on Guru and Sikhi, where we'll have Kiran Kaur, Jujhaar Singh, and Pritpal Singh presenting, followed by a video from that's been prepared for you on Guru Tegh Bahadur Sahib. We did have a conference recently, and so we have put this video together for you. And then we'll roll into our second session, which is connecting through Shabad with Satpreet Kaur, Jasleen Kaur. Kiran Kaur will be joining us again, and Vivesh Singh as well, and followed up by closing remarks towards the end. So you can see we do have a packed schedule for today, but a very inspirationally packed schedule. Technical reminders, just in case you lose connection, not to worry, just rejoin. If you need to rejoin through phone line, that confirmation email you were sent last night has all that information in there. You may have noticed that the sessions are being recorded, and we will be sharing these after the event. If you have any questions during the presentations, put them into the chat along with your name. They'll be addressed during our Q&A. During the Q&A sessions, we will be making use of the raise hand feature, so you will be able to ask questions if you'd like during that, or just pop them in the chat and we will address them during then. Breakout rooms. So both of our sessions do have some breakout rooms, and during those breakout rooms, we do encourage you to turn on your videos if possible, because that's what's going to create our conversation, and you get a chance to meet everyone as well during those breakout rooms. Anytime during these presentations, if you need any assistance, please just pop it into the chat. We have Jasdeep Kaur in the background. She's Jasdeep Kaur admin. If you have any questions, just send them her direction, and she will address those as we go. All right, so just a couple of notes on the culture at Sidak. This is extending to this event as well. As we've said, this is a glimpse into Sidak, and so it's also a glimpse into the sort of environment that we create. And so the biggest thing to remember here is that this is a safe space. It does take a lot of courage to come and be vulnerable and kind of reconstruct some of your learnings and your understandings. And so we'd ask you to be mindful and respectful of the viewpoints of others that may be a little different than yours. When we get into these discussion groups, you will hear from many participants. And so just be mindful of their viewpoints as well. But the biggest thing here is about asking questions, and Sidak is all about asking questions that you've wanted to ask, but you were afraid to ask. So this is a no judgment place. If you've got a question, it may seem to you that, oh, I don't know if I'm I'm okay saying this. Is this an appropriate question? Please ask the question, because you will never know until you ask the question. And Sidak, this is Sidak. This is what we do. And also enjoy. You are going to see a lot of information. You're going to have a lot of moments of reflection. But at the end of the day, this is really a time for you to enjoy your learning here today. All right. And with that, that brings us to the opening of our very first session, Guru in Sikhi. So this session will be focusing in on the Guru's role in a Sikh's personal and panthak lives. We'll go through a bit of history and descriptions of the role. Today we have with us presenting Jujhaar Singh, Pritpal Singh, and Kiran Kaur. Just a little background on our three presenters. Jujhaar Singh is an alumni of 2010 and 2013. He's a facilitator with Sidak, and he is also on our board of directors. Jujhaar Singh, I met Jujhaar Singh at Sidak in 2014, and he was actually my TA for Sikhi 201. And then following that, he's now become our facilitator with the program during Sidak. Kiran Kaur is, I also met for the first time in 2014, and she came back again as a participant in 2017 and again in 2018 and 2019. She was a TA for Sikhi 20 or Sikhi 101 and also helped with our facilitation team last year during Sidak 2020, which was online. And she's back again today presenting throughout the day. And so we're very excited to have her here. Kiran is an amazing artist, and a lot of her pieces really are inspired by what she's learned at Sidak. And also we have Pritpal Singh. Pritpal Singh is a facilitator for Sikhi 101. And again, and you'll notice this, a lot of our facilitators, although they're in main tracks, we do kind of jump in and out of other tracks as well. Pritpal Singh is known to be the funny person at Sidak. He definitely brings the humor and the fun at Sidak. And we're very excited to have all three of them here today. So I will turn this over to the team to present. And first up, we have Jujhaar Singh.
Waheguru Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. It's nice to see at least that there's a lot of people here. Thank you for joining us. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right. Thank you for that lovely introduction, Anu Kaur. And just a couple things that we want to keep in mind. The first is that, as you can see, most of us have our videos off and our cameras off. Feel free to use the reactions button if you'd like to, if something was confusing or you liked something that we said. You can find it at the bottom right corner. In fact, if you want to just go ahead and give a fake reaction or just a test reaction, go for it now. There we go. And then the other thing is that if you have any questions or reflections, feel free to put them in the chat. I'll be monitoring it. We all will be. We'll save the Q&A for the end. And then lastly, just a couple things for you personally. This presentation only takes shape if you engage with it. So what I would love to have people do is really think about what this means for you. Sikhi and Guru, the concept of Guru is a very personal thing for everyone. So take this time to be open, be gentle with yourself and others as you learn and kind of explore, and just keep an open mind. So that's the only intro I will give. The first thing we're going to talk about is actually your current thoughts towards Guru and Sikhi. So we have these two questions open. And before we get into sharing, what I'd like you to do is just close your eyes and think about what is Guru to you and why is Guru important to you. So all of us as Sikhs have a connection with Guru. So I'm just going to take 30 seconds, close your eyes and think about that. Thanks for doing that. What we're going to do now is actually share a little bit, but in this Jamboard. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to share that Jamboard. It's been shared in the chat. So you can go ahead and click on it. And essentially what you can do here is if you come here to the sticky note section, you can click it and you can put what Guru means to you. So Guru is grace, you might say. And then you can save it. There's also other things you can do here like draw, but probably the easiest is just clicking the sticky note button. So we're going to give you a few minutes to just, we're going to give about 4 minutes to just type, you know, whatever Guru means to you, whatever reflections you had in this. Nice. And I'm going to go ahead and move some of them because they're piling up a little bit. Guide. We have a lot of guiding values, path, role model, inspiration, support. Yeah, feel free to move these around. The ship. Interesting. It's good. Reality check. Yeah, there's a lot of perfect wisdom, a guiding light, mentor. Confidant. There. Role model. Yeah, this is wonderful. A lot of similar themes here, but all in unique ways. Unconditional light. Feeling. Interesting. Inspiration. Love, friend. Yeah, and if you want, feel free to put, you know, if there's a shabad or a tuk that sticks in your mind when you think of Guru, feel free to share that as well. You can share multiple: intuition, eternal. Yeah, this is beautiful. I really enjoy the ones about love, light, you know, reality. Tu mera rakha, sabni time. Yeah. So as we can see, you know, in a Sikh's life, the Guru is such a powerful force and means so many things to so many different people. End in the beginning. Interesting. Okay. Yeah, that's really beautiful. I think we'll put any last ones you have, maybe 30 more seconds. Guru jaisa nahi ko dev, jis mastak paag laga sev. Sunshine. Thank you for sharing that. And hopefully, you know, it was interesting to see others as well. And in some ways, it's such a personal relationship, but you can tell that for us as Sikhs, the Guru is such a pivotal concept. So I'll go ahead and start sharing again. You can keep putting stuff in the Jamboard if you'd like. It's a good way to, you know, kind of see what everyone thinks. So in this slide, you know, these are some of the concepts that actually you all shared, and I just wanted to go through briefly. So this is by no means an exhaustive list, but some ways that we can think about Guru are as a revelatory messenger. You can think of Guru Nanak saying, Mardana Rabab Chair Turki Bani Ai, that, you know, the origin, the source, the Bani from the source is coming through me. So we think about Guru as someone who is able to connect us to Vaheguru as a messenger of that revelation. The second is as the essence of the Guru, as the message itself. So Shabad Guru, the Guru Granth Sahib. Oh, pardon me, I have the timers going off that I had. So we think about Guru Granth Sahib as the essence of Guru, Shabad Guru. The third we might think about Guru is as a revolutionary. So when you think about how the Gurus brought revolution to individuals and revolutionized individuals, and then to societies, we're talking about nation building, we're talking about freedom from oppression. And that the Gurus not only had the Pidi side, but the media as well. They were very much in the world and trying to make it a better place. A lot of people talked about a common way to interpret Guru is as teacher. So illuminating or visionary guide. This is someone who brings you along the path. And you can think of Sakhis like Sajjan Thug, where someone who is completely focused on their own gain, on even hurting other people, is changed by Guru Nanak into someone who then does net positive good for the world and starts to take care of people. Guru is perfection. I think in Sikh parlance, all of us are in some ways trying to strive to be as great as possible, but the Guru is the embodiment of that perfection. And you'll hear this in stuff like, Mera pura Satguru. Pura means full or complete. And that's kind of a way of saying the complete or perfect Guru. And then lastly is institution. And this is one that we'll definitely be covering in the rest of the session. But Guru Granth and Guru Panth, how is Guru embodied in Sikhs today, in the Panth today? And then lastly, we kind of have the etymological meaning. So Gu means darkness and Ru means light. So if you think about someone who takes you from darkness to light, the illuminator. And so as you can see, the concept is actually quite broad. And even in the Jamboard that we just put up, the sheet where everyone's shared, you could see that all these elements kind of start to come out. So maybe we can start with kind of a basic question, which is, what is the role of Guru? And there's a lot of great answers to these questions. Feel free to put yours in the chat. But one way to think about it is in the Sikh paradigm, if we look at Mool Mantar, Ik Onkar or One Force, and this translation, this transcreation might be something that's a little bit newer for you. But if we look at Mool Mantar, the last line of Gur Prasad, so realized through the perfect Guru. The Guru is the way to understand Vaheguru. That's how important Guru is in our lives. The Guru is the one who helps us connect with Ik Onkar. And this is different from some other traditions where, there has to be an intermediary. We all believe that each of us have a personal connection with Ik Onkar, but the way to realize that and strengthen it is through Guru. And you hear this in Bani, bin Satgur kine na payo, bin Satgur kine na paya. So Satguru is really the way to embody the divine traits, which are listed here. With that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Pritpal Singh, who is going to be taking us through the Guru in history. Thank you for your participation, and I hope that we started thinking about the role of Guru. Pritpal Singh?
Hanji, thank you, Jujhaar Singh. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. I'm Pritpal Singh, and I'll be sharing with you about the role of Guru in history. Next slide, please. So we all know there were 10 Gurus. They took on 10 physical forms. But according to Gurbani, their spirit was essentially the same. There's a Var by Satta and Balwant, which talk about even though the bodies change, but the spirit was essentially the same. And they had direct connection with the divine, with one universal message. And this is quite profound because what makes it unique is it appealed to everybody. There was no exclusion criteria. It didn't matter where you were born, what language you spoke, what your family status was, what your education background was, what your gender was. But what mattered was you're willing to be inspired, your willingness to listen, give yourself an opportunity. And that was the genius of the Guru, that they transformed an average individuals in every spectrum of their life. And the way they operated, it was beautiful. Next slide, please. So back in 15th century, when Guru Nanak came, and this is still true to some extent, that there were intermediaries who actually told you, who dictated what your relationship could be, if at all, with the divine. But gurus disrupted that. It's that only you will define what your relationship with the divine will be. It will based on your passion, your desires, your efforts, not somebody else telling you what it could be or could not be. And the way they did that was, again, the universal message of employment of common language. So yes, gurus connected with average folks because they spoke the language the average person spoke. And so it's not just Persian, language of the elite, or Sanskrit. Gurus spoke and wrote and had conversations with common folks in vernacular languages. And it's not by coincidence Guru Granth Sahib Ji has all these languages within it. That was the beauty of, that was their communication genius, that they connected with individuals. Yes, there was a development of a script called Gurmukhi, which provided consistency. Next, please. Next slide, please. So some of the examples let's sort of dwell on is Guru Nanak's reduction of the Janau. So you've all sort of, I'm sure, have heard this Sikhi. Guru Nanak was a child. Imagine his father was the second most important person in the town. So imagine your father has invited who's who in the town. The mayor is there, all the business leadership is there, the political leadership is there, the religious leadership is there, to witness this event where you step into adulthood, where you go through a ceremony which makes a statement that you're entering adulthood. Everybody's eyes are on you. And Guru Nanak questions it. And he questions it in a way saying that, tell me how this cotton thread is supposed to make me a better person. How will it improve my connection with the divine? And he's told, well, it's just the way it is. And he brings in the gender issues as well. He says, well, if it's because of my age, then how come my sister, who's 5 years elder than me, Bebe Nanki, was not given that same opportunity? It takes courage to do that. Guru Nanak set the standard early on in his life that he's not going to embrace meaningless rituals. Rituals by themselves, without actual change in attitude, in behavior, in decision-making process, actually serve no purpose. So when we look at that, as we aspire towards looking at Guru Nanak, not just through historical lens, but applying into our lives, it should provide us with insight. What drives us? Are we doing things in our life which are strictly ritualistic, or do they actually have meanings? Let's look at the next example of selection by Mardana as a travel partner. Imagine you're going on a journey, a 20-year journey. That might be a little difficult to imagine. Let's make it real. Let's say you're going backpacking for a couple of weeks. Who will you choose as your partner? And what would your selection criteria be based on? Guru Nanak chose Bhai Mardana based on this gift he had of music. He played rabab, which captures the spirit of humanity. And he didn't see that Bhai Mardana came from a different background, family background, that he had different, his family had different faith. He didn't see the differences that were any labels with Bhai Mardana. He saw the goodness, how Bhai Mardana can actually create oneness and bring people together. And if we look at, if that is something that we look at and try to, learn from that example, is how does it apply to our lives? How much do we, when we have to create relationships, what drives us to create that relationship? Is it the labels? Is it sort of doing risk-benefit analysis? Or it's something that's greater than all of that? And music, music is so beautiful because it goes beyond cultures, beyond languages. And Bhai Mardana had that gift. And right now, if you want to learn music, all you have to do is Google it. Perhaps you'll find teaching lessons. You can hire a coach to do that. The access is quite easy. But back in the day during Guru period, music was only for the elite. In the hierarchy of pyramid system, caste system, the lower classes had no access to it. And by doing it, the gurus opened access to all, to common folks. The only requirement actually was your desire. So the question again comes to us: what is our desire? What do we want to do? Next slide, please. There are multiple examples on here. In interest of time, I'll just talk about one. Look at compilation of Ad Granth. So Guru Arjan Padshaah, he compiled the Bani of 4 earlier gurus than him. And not just that, he actually took writings of non-Sikhs and included in Ad Granth. This is monumental. He didn't look at the labels or their backgrounds. He looked at, is the message of their writings same as what it is of Guru Nanak, of connecting, of oneness, of creating a relationship with Creator and the creation. And history had never witnessed that before. And till this day, it's an amazing example for us and for the world. The idea again is, when we have to make a decision, when we look at our behavior, we have to have connection with what is driving it. Is it creating oneness? Does it have a universal appeal? Or is it something else that's driving it? So gurus, as you can look at these examples, what we just discussed, they didn't quite sit on the sidelines. They were very active. They embraced controversial stuff because to them, the controversies were not controversial at all. The methodology they utilized was very creative and one that connected people. So if we want to invite Guru into our life, what we should be thinking about is not just learning some things for test or for this, learning it for just for academic purposes, but the idea is, if we are trying to emulate the example set by the gurus, reflecting on our own actions, and how do I create that oneness with the divinity? How do I create that relationship with my surroundings? What's happening in my surroundings? Does it impact me? Why or why not? Next slide, please. So I think, next slide, please. What we'll look at, like all of you to take 4 minutes, and we'll repeat the same thing what we did earlier with the Jamboard. The link is on there. If you can click on it, please think about this question and start writing that. how can your relationship with the Guru be reflected in your actions? So how can you have a relationship? How could you improve your relationship with the Guru? Remember, there are no right or wrong answers. Take a minute, think about it, use the sticky notes, like the example we did, and share. So it's a little bit tougher question. It's asking you to think, but that's the whole idea. Very good. Recognition of others' humanity. Compassion towards others. It does start with that. Respect. Being non-judgmental. Very good. Standing up for what's right. Application of Guruji's lesson. Very good. Yeah. Without the application, it's purely an academic exercise. Showing love. Yeah. Having trust in divine will. Listening. Yeah. That's often a skill that has to be learned. Life of service. How to relate and have compassion for people who might not come from the same background. Absolutely. Look at the example of Bhai Mardana. Thinking beyond self. Living mindfully. Perhaps living in awareness. Doing Path, Kirtan, applying what Bani says. Simple thing, but very profound. Fighting against injustice. Connecting to Guru. Yeah, that is the key. Asking questions and then actually listening to the response. To be non-judgmental towards peers. To experience oneness. So these are excellent ideas. The key lies in applications. Creating Wahguru moments in everyday life. That would require being in awareness. Very good. To communicate with wisdom. Creating things that are accessible in life and work. Yeah. Feeling the grace. Yeah. It has to start with the feeling. If feeling is not there, then there will be obstacles. Yes. This is excellent. Let's take about 30 more seconds and we'll move on to our next. Apply Sikhi lens on happenings around the world. Yeah. You have to. Self-love and self-compassion. Counseling. Wow. Yeah. Perhaps proactive counseling. Usually we look at counseling in a negative way. What happened wrong? Understanding hukum. Yeah. This is
I think Pritpal Singh may have frozen on my end. helping the needy, being open towards happenings and not giving labels. Yeah, I'm sharing. Yeah, I think while he's coming back, these are all excellent answers. And I especially love the ones that are talking about, you know, living the revolution that the Guru started. I think he will rejoin in a second, but until then, what I'll do is go back to the presentation. And I think actually the next portion is going to be run by Kiran Kaur.
Yeah, thanks, Jujhaar. Vaiguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaiguru Ji Ki Fateh. My name is Kiran Kaur, and I'm going to talk about this next segment of the presentation, which is in a post-Guru period or in a post-embodied Guru as leadership, what does Guru look like? Because it's clear in the examples that Pritpal Virji gave about what Guru Nanak Sahib did while he was walking the earth, but in a time after that, how do we recognize and see Guru in the world? And so next slide, please. We're going to start with sort of the tail end of that historical chronology. So beginning with the establishment, so to speak, of the Guru Khalsa Panth in 1699. And so when we say Guru Granth and Guru Panth, there's the concept of Guru Granth as the Guru Granth Sahib as the selected works of Gurbani that became an authority. And I'll touch on that again later. The second half is the Guru Khalsa Panth as established by Guru Gobind Singh Sahib. And so he established what the authority would be going forward following himself as the 10th embodied Guru, and bestowed Guruship and Gurugadi to the Khalsa Panth on that day of Vaisakhi in 1699, not just by saying it, but by giving and then receiving Amrit from the Panch Pyare. And so it was that action of receiving Khanda Ki Pol from 5 Sikhs, who he had given that authority to, that conveyed that message, so that without doubt or without hesitation, Guru Gobind Singh Sahib kneeled in front of 5 members of the Guru Khalsa Panth and created that authority, which is incredibly powerful. So the underlying message being that the Guru in all of this, in this all-embracing approach, was asking us to give up things like caste and creed and these other divisions and try to replace them with these tenets that were given as names to the 5 Singhs. So next slide, please. As I had mentioned, the first half being Guru Granth, and just as Khanda Ki Pol was the indication of authority for the Guru Khalsa Panth, the authority from the Guru Granth Sahib is given within. And so this line, Poti Parmeshwar Ka Than, is the idea that the Guru Granth is the dwelling place of the divine, of Ik Onkar. And so all the immortal things, all those immortal truths with like a capital T are found in the Guru Granth Sahib, which is from where it gets its authority. Next slide, please. And so this is a quote by Professor Pritpal Singh. And he says, in the constitution of the Khalsa Commonwealth, the greatest act of genius of Guru Gobind Singh was when he transferred the divine sovereignty vested in him to the God-inspired people, the Khalsa. So as Jujhaar Singh was discussing before, that Guru is the messenger and the message and the embodiment and the manifestation of this Jyot, or this divine light. That's what makes that transfer of power to the Panth much more notable, because it's saying that that same light and spirit, that same thread that carried the message through the 10 embodied Gurus, can also be found in the Guru Granth as well as the people who follow it in that Sangat. And so that was the stroke of genius that Professor Pritpal Singh talks about. So next slide, please. Pritpal Singh was talking about the revolution as it began. So there's examples about Guru Nanak Sahib and what he was trying to convey. And so there were goals to that revolution. There was this very intentional assertion of an egalitarian society, politically, economically, in terms of civil aspects, to fight religious oppression and political oppression, to give power back to the people. And so those goals were linked and interdependent and carried through from the time that the Gurus were around straight afterwards. And so the scope of the presentation doesn't extend to all of these examples, but this is something that is definitely part of discussion at Sidak. But for this purpose, I will go to the first one, which is the Khalsa Raj. So in terms of that establishment of an egalitarian society, this was a very poignant example. So in 1710, the Sikhs set up this republic underneath Banda Singh Bahadur, where land was given to the people, equality of citizenship was given, the idea that power came from the people and not from a privileged class was unique and was revolutionary at the time. And so there's a few extra things that are mentioned there: the coin, the seal, capital, the land. The coin, from within a history or sociological framework, currency gives sovereignty to a people in many ways, and having capital in that way. And so the names of Guru Nanak and Guru Gobind were on this coin. And so insofar as revolutionary goals go, this is a time where one could argue in a post-Guru period, the Panth was able to live out some of those goals. And this, of course, led to the missile system later down the line with its own strengths and challenges. But the idea is that the authority given to the Guru Khalsa Panth was also sovereignty. Next slide, please. Then, so as sort of like a culminating concept that ties our three components of this presentation together, Guru is more than just the 10 embodied Gurus or just the Shabad Guru on its own. It's a combination of all these things. So there's a tuk, Sabad Guru Surat Tun Chela. Wisdom is the Guru, and the consciousness or those consciousnesses that are attuned to it are the disciples. And so the wisdom has multiple forms, but regardless, that consciousness that taps into any of these sources, that's what a Sikh is, that's what a disciple is. And so wisdom is what can put us on this path of understanding, identifying with, remembering, praising a Kankar, living out those ideals. And we can find that wisdom accessibly in the Guru Granth Sahib, as the other presenters talked about how accessible it's meant to be. And then as a collective, the Khalsa Panth is responsible for upholding those values of justice, of human rights, of religious freedom that draw from that basis. So as much as wisdom as can be found accessibly within the Guru Granth Sahib, in terms of direction or directives, that also comes from my Sangat and also comes from my Guru. And so the idea of those being tied together. So the last section of this presentation is going to be one last question. And in the context of sovereignty, community, allegiance, principle, all the abstract and the concrete that we've discussed, we're going to do a final question. So next slide, please. So for the next 10 minutes, we're going to hop into some breakout rooms. Please turn your videos on and discuss with each other this question in the context of everything that we just talked about. Someone should be ready to share from your group what your collective discussion was, and feel free to take your time in figuring out what it is that you would like to share when we come back to the main group. There's, of course, no one right answer, as it's a personal reflection, but there's a wider range of possibilities. So I believe we're going to send out the breakout rooms.
We all went into breakout rooms, and now we're all back. So the next section is we'd actually like you all to share, if you feel comfortable, what you talked about in the breakout rooms. So what that means is that hopefully each breakout room designated one person to share some of the thoughts. If that was you, please just turn on your video, but keep your audio off, and we'll add you to the group and you can talk about it. And if you had thoughts to share and you weren't necessarily, anyone can share any thoughts in the chat about what you talked about, things that were surprising or interesting, or etc. And I'm going to actually go ahead and stop screen sharing so we can just have this conversation. But take one last look at the question, which is, how do you foster your relationship with Guru Granth and Guru Panth? Cool. So looks like Sangeet Anand is one of the group volunteers. Sangeet, please give us a minute. We want to keep it short because we don't have a ton of time, but give us a minute about what you all talked about. Oh, and you're still muted.
Oh, hello, everyone. I don't know if I have a minute, but I'll share what we thought. So I think the key things were getting the knowledge from the history, looking back and taking notes from there, and seeing how the gurus, what their actions were, what their about like their thought process was, reading books, and then so that's the knowledge and history portion. And then the other portion is having sangat and support. So having a community where you can, whether that's from the Gurdwara or an online community, or even people who are not Sikhs who have similar values and want to talk about similar things, that similar concepts that come out of the Guru Granth and Guru Panth. And then the third kind of thing was getting that knowledge and then having that support in community and applying it. So whether that's through seva or through your daily life, your actions. So applying that knowledge and having that community to support you while you do that. So that's kind of our, that was our combined answer.
That was a perfectly, well-timed, and it seems like there are a lot of great concepts in there. Sangat, seva, learning. So thank you for sharing that. Other group members from Sangeet, feel free to add a reaction, just so we know who you were. And for the next part, let's have Manat Kaur.
Sure. My video is disabled, so I can't turn on my camera, but we talked a lot about how it was oftentimes felt easier to follow the Guru Granth than it was to follow the Guru Panth. It just felt more personal versus I think sometimes in like following the Panth, it's subject to a lot of judgment from other people about like, are you following Rehat? Are you following Guru's Hukam the right way? And so we talked about how we wanted to actually start following Guru Panth more openly and just create a safer space, a safer Sangat, like Sangeet was talking about, where we could do both.
That's really cool. I love that answer, and thank you for sharing that. And group members for Manat Kaur, if you want to, give a reaction, feel free. Next, let's go to Gomarbir.
So my partner was Imrit in the breakout room. And the way that I talked about the personal relationship with the Guru. And I thought that before I start to think about what the Panth needs, I need to kind of have that relationship with the Guru myself. And so once I can foster that relationship, and that just involves in like putting in that work. Like everyone tells you that your Guru is your rock and your Guru is you have to have faith in your Guru, you have to trust your Guru. But I think that saying these things is, a lot easier than actually believing them and actually cultivating that trust and faith that you have in your Guru. So putting in that work was the first step. And then Imrit spoke about how once you can do that, the best way to actually approach Guru Panth is through Sangat, like the other Sidakers have mentioned before. And so, for example, what we're doing here is like creating a little community and becoming each other's Sangat is a seva in sort of a way. And when we talk about concepts like Gurbani and we talk about all these things that happen in history, they only strengthen the relationship that we have with their Guru, which in turn then strengthen the relationship we have within each other, and kind of reminds me of Miri and Piri, how you need to have the one before you have the other. And then it's like a perpetuating cycle, it just doesn't stop.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. A lot of great concepts there. Jujhaar Singh?
Hey guys, I think just a quick summary with just what our group was going through was one thing we've noticed was like, trying to balance life, and with Guruji's message of finding that balance, too much of anything is bad. So, like ras meetha ras mas, like too much of sugar is bad, right? So finding that balance, I feel like you learn more about yourself. And when you learn more about yourself, you're more in tune with him. So for example, one of the Bajis was saying, there's so many distractions in the world we live in, right? But that's Guruji's message of, living in these distractions and still being in touch with him. So personally for me, finding that balance, I feel like, when to be humble, when to talk up, like stuff like that. You find like, okay, I see what's going on here. And you learn more about when to draw those lines for yourself. And, goes back to too much discipline to spontaneity, right? Doing Path and Rat Mirada, like I'm not going to sit here and tell you I do Panch Baniya, but I try to do the little bit, like I'll do, Kirtan Sola every night, something simple. So I think was the main message that we were trying to get to. So just finding that own balance for yourself, and slowly that's how you can start fostering a relationship with yourself and God.
Yeah, well, I wanted to be in every single one of these breakout groups. They're such awesome topics to cover. Angad Singh.
Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. So we had Guntas and Gurpreet Kaur and myself. So we were three people. We were just like what to talk about because it's such a wide range of topic to be discussed. But we the summary is that as Kunwar Veer said that the first connection should be built with the Guru, and the Guru and the Panth are no two different entities. It's one, and if we are connected to Guru, we are somewhere down the line always connected to the Panth. So then we brought the discussion that at a personal level, we read Gurbani for self. We read Gurbani for our, I mean, like all the motivation, the courses, whatever we do is something we feel that we are doing for ourselves because, and to deal with our vikars. But somewhere down the line, we do not realize that the more we get connected to the Guru, the more the society that we surround ourselves, or the energy that we surround ourselves, is of a similar part. So the Panth is something that we are building. The content that we are reading, we are promoting that content. So that is aligned to the Guru. The people we are meeting, we are encouraging them, we are supporting them. So we are somewhere encouraging the Panth as well. So that was one part. But also bringing to the discussion was that Panth is not just people who are wearing turbans or who know Punjabi. Panth is something what we are, what 10% or 5% of the whole population, but the Jot exists in the 97% of the world as well. So the last point was that remembering the lessons of Guru from the historic, as Kiran Kaur had shared, and Pritpal Viji shared about the historical revolutions, is a remembrance that even we as an individual can bring the same revolution today as well. And there were no people like Sikhs there at that time, and even then the Guru was able to do it. And now we have Guru Granth Sahib Ji with all the message, and we are still not able to match up to the expectation level of the Guru. Sorry for taking a lot of time, but we had so much going around with this topic. Thank you for bringing this topic. That's it. Thank you. Vaheguru.
Thank you for sharing that. Is there anyone else who'd like to share? You didn't have to be a lead in your group. Any other? Give it. Anika Singh, although you're still on mute.
Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. So I was with Robbie Gill. It was just the two of us. So we got more time to talk, which was great. Thanks, Robbie. Maybe you could come online as well and support me in what we share. So what we discussed about was, and like you said, there's no right and wrong. So I hope, we discussed it from a different perspectives, where we said that Guru Granth is the Shabad wisdom, the wisdom is there, and Panth is when we are institutionalizing some of the things that we've got from the wisdom and taking it forward, like we talked about the Langar Seva. We had a very interesting conversation about how do we use all these things in our personal lives. Robbie shared some example from his life, how Japji Sahib has been something that has been very powerful for him, and how he starts his day with that. And we discussed some of those things. With our work backgrounds as well, how that wisdom helps us. How do we translate that wisdom into day-to-day life and situations? So yeah, it was a great opportunity to have that kind of a dialogue. So thank you for that.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Shabad wisdom and seva through Panth. It's awesome. I think Tarsim Singh. Yeah, and this will be the last one. So go for it.
Okay, just a short one. Members in my group, we were relating how the different words, different labels, different characteristics of gurus that were shared appeal to us, related to us at different phases of our lives. And we were quite intrigued to explore that further. Why is that so? Is there something to it? What does this mean? How do we get the complete picture? So that was something that we wanted to explore further. Yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you everyone for sharing. I wrote down some of the words and phrases that were used. Those stuff like revolution, individual relationship with Guru Granth and Guru Panth. Pritpal Singh and Kiran Kaur, anything you any comments or thoughts on the sharing?
It was very actually good to hear from everybody that not only you actually discussed the concepts that were covered in these brief 3 sections, but you actually applied it. And that's the whole idea, because if the application is not there, then really there is no growth. So thank you for doing that for the benefit for not just yourself, but for everybody.
Yeah. Kiran Kaur, anything to add?
Yeah, I think I very much appreciate, again, everybody sharing and being so open, even though we met each other half an hour ago. I think it's a deeply personal thing to reflect on, like right out the gates. And so I appreciate that. And I think a lot of the things that each of you shared will resonate with different people within this group differently, because some of us are on similar journeys, some of us are on different journeys, depending on where we grew up and what our relationship currently is or has been. And so I appreciate everybody sharing and being so open.
That was awesome. I mean, honestly, some of you should be teaching us, and we're all learning as we facilitate and talk from each other, like Kiran Kaur said. I think the rest of the time that we have is for Q&A. So we wanted to leave some time in case there were topics people wanted to discuss or questions that you had based on the presentation. Feel free to. The best way probably is to put it in the chat. If that's difficult for you, raise your hand or go ahead and give us a signal, and we'll call on you. And if no one asks questions, then I'll just have to ask the other 2 questions that come to mind for me.
Please do me a favor, guys, and ask some questions. I don't want Jujhaar Singh to ask me questions.
I have a question for, I would say, like, all of you guys, and it's a really generic question, but I think it's become more and more important for me throughout this pandemic, which was not just the pandemic, but also, like, we've seen a lot of social movements. What do you think is the best way to ground our Panthak work in Guru-oriented, like in a Guru-oriented manner? Because I find it really difficult to continue doing Panthak work in a lot of spaces, because it is really, really draining. But also, like, in order to balance your mental space and in order to also know exactly what you're doing and why you're doing it, I think is really important as a Sikh. And in order to make sure we're always grounding our Panthak work within, the Guru mindset, I find that, like, really difficult. So how do you guys navigate that?
So you're asking how do we navigate what's happening, the movements within the Gurmat framework?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I can get started. I think it really comes down to your connection with the Guru. I mean, the idea is if there are things happening in the world and they're not affecting you, they're not impacting you, then the question must be raised, why or why not? And if they are impacting you, why are they? And if they're not, then why are they not? So if you look at the examples from Guru's era we provided, they actually they embraced controversies. They didn't really run away from it. Now the methodology they used, that was creative. That varied based on the issue at hand or the audience. So I think number one has to be very clear is your understanding of the Gurmat way. If you look for answers from Gurbani, okay, because that's the inspiration. if you find that, then you look for examples from our history. Are there some things that you can relate to get a better understanding of, like a precedent or something? And then you have to apply it to your life, because without the application, there isn't anything. So if let's say take Black Lives Matter, you know, if somebody were to ask you, why are you at that product, or why are you not at there? One should be able to respond to that. But in order to do that, you need to be honest with yourself and know what your relationship with your surrounding is. Because if you don't have a relationship with your surroundings, then probably it's not going to impact you. So
yeah, I have something I can add.
Yeah, no, I was going to say that if I haven't, if that's sort of a generic answer, but I believe Kiran is going to probably has something more focused.
No, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I think the question is very relatable for me in terms of, I think Tandeep, you mentioned like bandwidth and how much you can spread yourself, or how many things that you can think about and how many things you can consider within the scope of your relationship to Guru, and how you can live those things out. And so that's definitely something personally that I have a hard time with. Like Hassan Minhaj talked about, like his last episode of Patriot Act, having like 1,000 tabs open for everything that's going wrong in the world. And I think that's something that's difficult for me to manage. And we talked about this, I remember in the fall of last year with the farmers' protests. And as somebody who doesn't have a lot of family still in India, my connectivity and my ability to enact specific change somewhere like Punjab is difficult. And so I think this was a conversation with Pritpal Virji, where the consensus was sort of, there are things that we have more control over and have more influence over in our lives. Like if we're talking about food insecurity as a broad issue in Punjab, there's food insecurity in DC where I live. And so the principle of helping people, or of living out a principle that we find that we connect with through Sikhi, doesn't have to be all around the world, which I think is a hard pressure to relieve ourselves of. But I think that's how I try to think of it, is where are the places where I can physically show up and tangibly show up, that I have some semblance of control over, if that makes sense.
These two said it way better than I ever could, but I think the one thing, Tandeep, that I would add is the need for constant inspiration and rejuvenation. You know, growing up, I thought, oh, okay, I have to do Path because it's mandated, or, you know, someone told me to, or in order to be a good Sikh, that's something that's important to me. Whereas now, if and when I engage with Shabad Guru especially, that's a way for me to refresh myself, because sometimes this can be hard. You know, there's a lot of things that maybe not are going the right way, but to attack them in the spirit of Chardi Kala, for me, Bani and especially Shabad has been a huge way for me to kind of rejuvenate myself. The next question, we'll go to Mannat Kaur, and then we'll go to some of the ones in the chat. Mannat?
Thank you. Pritpal Uncle was talking about how ritual without like decision change and attitude change is not really worth it. One thing I just struggle to explain to people, and I'd love to get your take on, is Guru Nanak Dev Ji rejected the Janayu, and I think throughout Sikhi we see these examples where our gurus reject rituals and idols, but then why do we keep our case? Why do we keep our kakar? What's the attitude change that happens through those? How does that influence our decision making and our relationship with the Guru?
Yeah, I can handle that one. The key there was if the ceremony has no meaning to you, then it's worthless. Okay, but then you're just checking the box. But if you have meaning in the ceremony, and the ceremony actually the meaning of ceremony is translating into your life, into your everyday lifestyle, then it's meaningful. So, for example, you brought in the kakars. The kakars are actually gifts from the Guru. So if one feels like mere te boj haga, man, I have to, oh my God, I don't want to keep this, but I have to keep this, then I think the perspective is very different than versus this is my gift from the Guru. I treasure it. I value it. I love it, because to me it has meaning in my life. So I think the key becomes perspective, and the key becomes the meaning that's translating into your everyday life. If it's not, then the value just simply does not exist.
Nice. I really like that answer. Kiran Kaur, anything to add?
Yeah, I think a shabad that it's difficult to sometimes conceptualize which things are rituals, which things are traditions, which things have meaning. And so that's like, again, one thing that I think is great about the choice offered in Sikhi is how much optionality there is with that. And so I think there's a shabad that we talk about, Aarti. And so in Aarti, there's this conversation of doing Aarti physically and doing like it as a ritual. And Guru Nanak Dev Ji's criticism of Aarti isn't that like doing it is bad, but if it's an incomplete understanding of the world and used to replace real connectivity, then there's like something missing there. And so if you keep your gifts because somebody else told you to, or if you keep Panchkakar because somebody else told you to, then it might be a ritual. Then it might be something that you're just doing out of habit or for something else. And if you're doing it with meaning, and if you're doing it with you're out of your relationship with the Guru, or what you're trying to make of your relationship with your Guru, regardless of where you are on that path, then it's not. Then it's something that's real. And so I think the intentionality is something that's given a lot of weight in Sikhi, which is a gift.
Beautiful answer as well. Next question. There's nothing I can add to those two. Thank you for sharing those both. Anika Singh writes, could you share some of your personal examples of how you translate the Shabad wisdom in your life? And then she added on, and what are some of the challenges you face, like things that you understand intellectually but struggle to apply sometimes? Kiran, do you want to start with this one? It's in the chat if it's easier to read it that way.
Yeah, I see it. Yeah, sure. So personally, in the last year with being home, I took the opportunity to learn a lot of kirtan from my 17-year-old cousin who's much better than I am. And so with her, I got to be exposed to a lot of new shabads and new wisdom that I didn't have a relationship with before. And I remember she sent me notes to learn Pura Nyaya Kare Kartar at the beginning of the pandemic. And Pura Nyaya was like perfect justice, or true justice is done by the Guru, Kare Kartar. And I remember at that time, it was about the pandemic. It was about the world shutting down and people losing their jobs and things going south for a lot of different communities. And it felt hard to find an explanation of justice, and it felt hard to identify silver linings. And so the point of the way I'm answering this question is that Shabad can change over the course of time, and your relationship to a piece of Shabad can change over the course of time, because the next time I came back to read it, it was during the Black Lives Matter protests. It was a few months later. And so like the concept of justice can change, and the way that it's centered in your life at any given moment can change. And so I think like that's how I would start with answering that question. I don't know how to say, this is how I apply it, and I know what I'm doing, and this is exactly how it works. But in terms of the intellectual exercise of trying to internalize a message, that's what I tried to carry with me, like during those periods of time where I didn't feel like there was justice. And so it's just like, I don't know, it's a bit of an incomplete answer, but allowing Gurbani to change over time helps it feel like the timeless aspect of it. Yeah, that's how I would answer that. Pritpal, Reggie, George, you want to add anything?
Okay, I can just add from you're asking for some personal experience. So how you translate Shabad wisdom in your life. I can tell you, I actually count a lot on my close knit of circle, because if I'm doing a proclamation that I love somebody, I love my Guru, then I'm actually opening myself for some critique as well. So proclamation doesn't really, proclamation something, it doesn't really it doesn't really show anything. By saying that you love somebody or you're an honest person, it doesn't prove anything. So I rely a lot on reflection, and meaning that actually take time out for myself. what I did, does it parallel to what I'm proclamating, what I say? And in doing that, I take out time every day for myself in actually analyzing the decisions that I made or the way I spoke. Is that in consistence with what Shabad says? The other thing I can tell you on a practical level, I have those people are very close to me, and I'll tell you, my wife and my mother, they challenge me every day. They challenge me every day, and I know this, I may not just be sharing, maybe I'm sharing too much, ਪਰ ਉਹ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸਪੀਚਾਂ ਬੜੀ ਵੱਡੀਆਂ ਦਿੰਦੇ ਹੋ, ਵਰਕਸ਼ਾਪ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਫੈਸਿਲਿਟੇਟ ਕਰਦੇ ਹੋ, ਪਰ ਗੁੱਸਾ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਬਹੁਤ ਆਉਂਦਾ ਹੈਗਾ. So I think that tells me there's room for growth. If the people who are close to me are witnessing that in me, then I need to work on that myself. So that involves being vulnerable, but that's where growth occurs. If you're willing to take that criticism as well and actually then apply constantly, keep chiseling it, you know, that's, to me, that's real.
Answers as well. I'll share very briefly. Personal examples of how I translate Shabad wisdom in my life. I think, like Kiran, I feel that whatever issue I'm dealing with, the answer lies in whatever I'm reading in Gurbani. And for me, Shabad and learning Shabad and singing Shabad is a big part of that, because that's how I feel like I actually interact with Gurbani. So that's kind of my way of interfacing. But the challenges are then, how do I take it from my room and make it a reality in the world? And I think that can get, hard to think about. In some ways you might know what's right, but the way to impact the world, especially, there's so few people who have the ability to think beyond just survival. And then there's even fewer who have the ability to think beyond, trying to climb whatever ladder there is. In a big way, Sikhi frees you and says, you got to focus on what's important. And it's not the transitory. It's not becoming necessarily the most wealthy person in the world. It's not, raising to the top of your job necessarily, but it's an impact in the world. And so the thing that I struggle with is, how do we turn these conversations into actionable things that can be done and things that I can control? Because it's also very overwhelming at times to think of all the different things that you could do or not doing. So for me, it's a process of wanting myself to be better while being gentle with myself, that I'm trying, and that the Guru is really the only way that I'll figure that out. It's hard for me to figure it out myself. Next question is from Jujhaar Singh. How do you deal with people with different views of Sikhi that conflict with yours?
How to deal with the people with the conflicting views of Sikhi than yours? That's the question. I think the crux of this question I apply to myself is, you can't really control or impact too much what other person thinks. You do have some level of influence on how you think yourself. So I focus on how I react or how I act, because reactionary measures usually are not fruitful. So the other thing is, you can't put Sikhi in a box. Like it's like trying to define Guru. We earlier, one of the slides we had, we don't have, Guru is beyond, description. Guru is beyond, you can't put a label of Guru is this, prophet, Guru is this. So I view that nobody can box up Sikhi. So the idea is, everybody has their own journey, and it's okay to have different interpretations. The idea is, if are you being honest with yourself and actually walking on the path which the Guru defined or as you interpret it? I think I would just focus on myself, that how do you deal with others? The worst thing you can do is actually get in an argument and get off track than what the person, what you define for yourself on the path that you wanted to walk on.
I'll take a stab at this and then Kiran, feel free. I think it starts with finding common ground. And I've kind of actually decided that in any sphere of life, the majority of times when I disagree with someone, if we want to resolve that, we both have to be willing to try and find some common ground. For Sikhs, that generally is the Guru Granth Sahib, right? So I do think there are actionable ways of interacting with other Sikhs whose views you differ from. But I think attacking it from a perspective of understanding, why do you believe this? Because views can come from a lot of things, including love for someone else who had certain views or the way you were raised, X, Y, Z. And so a big part of it for me is are we willing to try and find common ground together? And also, what can we decide on that then we can implement? I think strengthening ourselves as a community then will allow us to fulfill the promise of or the goal of Sikhi in revolutionizing all parts of our world. Get anything to add?
Yeah, I agree with that, with what you were saying about common ground. I think personally, I don't consider myself an authority on how other people should be doing the parts of Sikhi that I engage with, because mine has been the culmination of like a deeply personal life journey. Like it's something that I've been working on my whole life. And so if someone were to say like, I disagree with this, it's probably because we were raised differently or engaged with Sikhi differently or have a different viewpoint that was born out of something separate. And so, I mean, like Jujhaar said, there's always common ground. If we both say we're on the same path, then we definitely have something in common. And the way that we may go about it is going to be different. But arguing or trying to prove a point or try to say that one choice is better than another, I think negates I think something that we talk about at Sidak a lot is that one of the biggest themes in the Guru Granth Sahib, which is our common ground, is choice, and is like the way that you choose to engage with the world. And so that's how I try to look at it. Much easier said than done. I'm a very argumentative person, like don't get it twisted, but that's the way that I try to think about it and think about people who are different from us in the way that they walk the same path.
Let me give a historical example to better illustrate the point I think we're all trying to make, since I'm the history person here. We all know the Sakhi. When Guru Nanak, saw some things being happening, which he didn't agree with, this is what he did. Instead of giving water to the sun, he started giving water to his farms, and people said, what's wrong with this guy? What the hell are you doing, man? And he said, he played like, what are you doing? Well, I'm giving water to my field, which is several hundred miles away. They're like, well, I'm giving it to the sun. He's like, what's further, your field or the sun? So that was his creativity. And I think we should learn from that. I think Guru Nanak had a much more profound effect on those individuals than he would have said, he didn't say all things like that. He didn't get in their face. He took the criticism himself. But that's the beauty of the Guru. That's the creativity of the Guru. And I would apply the same example in our life. If somebody does that, focus it on ourselves, your own creative nature.
Yeah, there's some excellent questions in the chat. Unfortunately, we only have 2 minutes left, so we're just going to do a brief wrap up. I'm sorry we can't get to more questions. And for others, feel free to keep talking in the chat. But we'll just take 1 minute each to do a quick wrap up. My wrap up is, I just want to say thank you. I feel like I've learned a lot from here. I know the Q&A was directed at us, but I'm looking forward to today when we can all hear from the rest of you as to what you think and then learn from those perspectives. So thank you for being so engaged, especially remotely. Pritpal Singh, you want to talk next?
Yes, thank you again for giving us an opportunity to share with you all what Guru, the role of Guru in our life is. And I know I enjoy all of these, and I really hope one day we can meet in person. And this is just a glimpse of what happens at Sidak.
Yep, same as the other two. Thank you guys for being open with us and for participating in the conversation as thoroughly as you did. You'll see me again in the second session, so we'll be back. But this was really lovely, and thank you for taking the space and making space for each other.
So thank you, Pritpal Singh, Jujhaar Singh, and Kiran Kaur. That was really wonderful as your presentation was, and I want to clear that. So the part, what happened in the chat, in your Q&A, the participation of our participants was the jewel. That is what Sidak is about. And I'm so glad that the participants, felt comfortable enough to ask you these questions, and they were tough because a lot of them were personal. Kiran, I love the fact, argumentative, yes, well, you'll see that on that side of her at Sidak. You saw Pritpal being that, yes, the way he shares the message of Guru Nanak Sahib is rather casual, but interesting. It makes you think. I don't think I've heard too many people talk about Guru Nanak Sahib in that light, but we love you too, Pritpal. Thank you for keeping us grounded and making it real. And Jujhaar, the thinker, the ponderer. Okay, so how do we think about this intellectually? So you got a glimpse into their personalities of what the experience of the facilitators, and each facilitator at Sidak brings that, a part of them to Sidak. So you get a smorgasbord to say, look at their experiences. Now, what is it that I like about it, and what is it that I don't like about them? And that's what life is all about. And that's the journey. So thank you to the three presenters for your incredible presentation and being so open and engaging with our participants. Sidak can't do without you. Sidak is you, and you are Sidak. And thank you for that. And now we have put together a special 12-minute video presentation for you on our beloved ninth Pacha, the ninth sovereign, Guru Tegh Bahadur Sahib, Shrishti Chadar, the protector of humanity. The Guru has shown the way to his beloved Sikhs, the way we need to stand for justice, to be the voice of the voiceless, to be the diplomats, to be the peace brokers in every and any conflict, and so much more. So on this 400th Prakash Purab, Illumination Day of Guru Tegh Bahadur Sahib, we remember, we revere, and we celebrate together as a Sangat in gratitude. So do take some time and enjoy this video while you can continue on the chat, because there were incredible questions there, and I'm sure our participants and the panelists will engage in that. So Anu, please play the video.
These Hukamname are attributed to Guru Tegh Bahadur Sahib around 1670. The style of writing is known as Nastaliq calligraphy, using the Gurmukhi alphabet. The letters are stylized and the vowel sounds are modified. These Hukamname identify some of the early Sikh followers of the Guru, by Dayal Das, who was martyred before the Guru, by Sibhu, Seth Kalyanmal, and others. They are written to the Sangat, congregation of Banaras, acknowledging receipt of donations.